Hello, this is Jimbo from the YouTube channel Jimbo, South Dakota, and this is the Hog House Chronicles podcast. And next to me today, I have Jerry Mettler, a good friend of many years, and we'll go into some of that and some common friends that we have. And we go to the same church together, and he's got a lot of experience. We'll be talking where he grew up, military, and we're going to go from there. And we've got a lot of subjects to touch on today. So thanks for coming in, Jerry. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Agreeing to do this. So
I'm proud of what you're doing. This is really special. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So in general, we just pretty much start with where you grew up, whatever you want to say about family, and we'll go from there.
That sounds fine. When we introduced ourselves to doing this, and somewhat skeptical, I guess the narcissist might be coming out in me, but there's so many things that I've lived a really good life. I'm bumping up against 80 years old, and it's been good. Originally, of course, I was born in a German community up in northern South Dakota, 1945. I like to say that my baptism, which was in a Lutheran church, in a small Lutheran church, my baptismal certificate is in German, written in German. Mm-hmm. I have that framed. I don't know how proud my mother was of it because it was kind of curled up in a corner. And in 1945, the German people were maybe looking for more friends than were available at the time because of the war and so forth. But it was a humble beginning in that little German town, and my parents were living on a farm that they rented just west of a little village called Long Lake, South Dakota, which isn't that far from Eureka. The only time you might hear Eureka is on Kello TV. They sometimes have a photo of Eureka, but that's where I was born, and grew up on a farm not very far from there. I say, well, how did you get here? That's the long story, I guess, and we're not going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it today, I'm afraid, but because we visited about some of it previously. But my folks rented a farm, and the owner of the farm came to my dad and said, "Well, we're going to sell it. We want to sell it." And, "Well, how much do you want?" And the guy said what he wanted, and my dad had $2. And the owner wanted $3 an acre. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. I mean, this had to be 1947, 48, 49, something like that. But and it was cash deal. And my dad went to his father and asked him if he'd loan him the dollar. And he, of course, in his German voice, told my dad, "You can never make it farming at $3 an acre." And so they ended up moving to a little town called Long Lake, South Dakota, village of about 100. And we were the pool hall, the recreation parlor. They had the liquor license. My mom grilled hamburgers on the grill, especially Fridays and Saturday nights. I drug a Pepsi case, and a Pepsi case was about that tall, and I drug that around. And I told you that I tapped beer. I did.
Mm-hmm. At what age?
Well, 8 years old. That'll be a nickel, sir. And then later on in the evening, I would rack pool balls, drag that Pepsi case around, rack pool balls, and sometimes the guys maybe had some extra of the good stuff, and they'd tip me a nickel or something, and that was thrilled. But before I went to bed, I got a chocolate sundae, and that was Long Lake, South Dakota, and that's where I started school, first, second, and third grade in town. It was they call it Harrison number 3, and the first 6 grades were there, and I think there were 3 in my first grade, and my mother got pretty upset with the fact that the teacher would resort to speaking German to us if we didn't get something in English. And boy, that upset my mother, because my mother wanted us to speak English, have an education, because she wasn't allowed to go to high school when she wanted to go, and always bothered her.
So were you speaking German at that young age, or something?
I can speak German right now.
Right now, you got
and
it.
Understand it fluently. And if you remind me, I'll tell you about my experiences in Paraguay with my and in Brazil, wherever, because I ended up teaching myself Portuguese and Spanish, and I knew German. And
Well, they say if you learn, especially number one,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you learn young,
yeah,
and number
yeah.
two, if you've learned another language, and then you go to your third and fourth and fifth, that it's easier. Is that true?
It really was, and it is. The secret, or the problem is keeping it.
Yeah.
You know, at some point my dad would travel with me when I was in the sale management business. My dad would, and I would converse in German. I mean, because it was the way it was. So it was part of my heritage that I took for granted, and it bothered me because when we moved to Aberdeen, because my mom wanted us to get this education, and we're going to be the big shot Mettlers, and we're going to move to Aberdeen, you know, the big city, and we did when I was 8. And her primary focus was that we would learn English and go to an English school. And
So when you moved, that's when your bartending left.
days
You
were
were
over.
done
Yeah,
bartending by then?
it was short, but it was really good. I probably sipped some of those. Honest to goodness, it was German way to do.
It's like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, drink some beers. to this day, no. And so that was the start and the move to Aberdeen, and I was there till I went away to college. But that first year, the kids didn't know what to think of me. You know, my Jerrys were cherry, and I just went here, and so they teased me, and didn't seem to bother me a whole lot. But when we had to come back and give a little talk of what did we do over Christmas, well, I trapped at my grandpa's farm, which is Long Lake, right on the lake, and I trapped muskrats and mink and stuff, but I couldn't tell them what the stuff I was using to trap these critters. I could say it in German, but I didn't know how to say it. So I kind of got tears in my eyes, and the teacher said, "It's okay. You can go home and ask your parents, and then you can come and tell us what it is." And so I did. But
That's what I love about doing these things. I had no idea that you would be, when you're starting to talk, that you're struggling learning English after your primary German up until first, second grade.
Oh, I feel sorrier for my sisters. They were in 5th and 6th grade when we moved, and they were way ahead of the other students in Aberdeen because we were in this one-room schoolhouse where the 6th graders taught the 3rd graders their spelling, and we listened to all of what they were reading. So they had a tougher time of it than I did, and I was fortunate. And I'll never, forget riding my bike 6 blocks to Howard Hedger School in Aberdeen, and all these boys were playing baseball, and I loved baseball because my uncle, who was my favorite uncle in the world, on the farm when he came home from college or whatever, he'd play catch with me, and I pitched, and I was every Yankee there ever was and every Brooklyn Dodger. But I didn't have the nerve to go see those boys playing ball,
Yeah.
Then this kid that to this day I owe him so much because he introduced himself, and Raymond Rylance became one of my best friends. He invited me to join because he was a catcher, and he saw me pitching. I might have been throwing the ball up against the garage, I don't know, but he said, "You need to come out and play with us." So that's how I got introduced to some of the really, really nice kids, and a long time ago. How you remember that and be thankful for it. Yeah.
So once you broke through, then it just gradually grew, and then you were just fine.
I got to be, I guess, popular, and probably was a good kid and pretty decent athlete. Yeah, how I pronounce that. Athlete. Yeah,
I heard a little something there.
that was my lisp. I was about that tall, and everybody else was that big, So yeah, edit. But anyway, and right on up through high school when I was a quarterback on the football team and basketball, and then played varsity tennis. Heck, I was a state tennis champion when I was 14 years old.
Really?
Yeah, 1959 state tennis champion. Free trip to Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
It was amazing. First time away from home. to speak of.
Huh.
Didn't even know that, did you?
Oh, there's a lot. I knew there's a lot I didn't know. Plus, I'm not a cattleman, and we're going to get into that, so I plan on learning a lot about that.
That's fine.
But yeah, I didn't.
I told you I might digress.
Well, that's we're here to
Okay,
learn.
okay.
That's why I do this.
So Aberdeen was where, from Aberdeen, I went to South Dakota State.
Mm-hmm.
And my freshman year, the tuition was outlandish. It was $99 for a semester for all the hours you could take. In my first semester, I took 19 hours, and the second semester, 16 hours, and $99. I could make that in the summer, and that's where I started my my education, and was accepted into pharmacy school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that takes us up to SDSU, and there's a dear friend of mine and a relative called Jim Wooster, and Jim Wooster is related to me, kind of shirt sleeve, but the Wooster Hall is pretty much named after Jim, and they have a bust in the main entrance, and that of Jim, and it's looking up at a huge picture on the wall, and it's a picture of me in the bummobile, because I was Hobody chairman, and I'm sure he's sitting there admiring all my achievements, because I was Hobody chairman and I had controlled the bummobile. But anyway, I teased Jim that he's admiring me.
Yeah, well, you mentioned pharmacy, and you mentioned your uncle.
Yeah. Oh God.
Talk about your uncle a little more.
Yeah, my Uncle Don. I mean, he was been the best, and he's 90. We celebrated his 90th birthday, and he's a lifelong pharmacist, and he went to pharmacy school, and I thought, well, that's what I should do. I mean, he was my idol, and still pretty much is. So I went into pharmacy. And my Uncle Don was a pharmacist, and I would intern under him whenever I could. We had to have so many hours of internship before we could get our license,
right?
Which a lot of different professions have, and I could actually learn under him. But yeah, the days of being Hobody chairman and so forth was, like I said, I was never afraid to take a leadership opportunity, I guess, and worry about failing. But
do you still go up there? Do you do hobo days?
Yeah, they don't give us football
tickets
tickets free anymore. They used to give all the past chairmans
Well, yeah, now
free.
we're getting known within the nation.
Yeah, I know it, and
which is a good thing. But
well, I was on the staff of University of Nebraska and Johns Hopkins University and Southeastern Medical School, and I never got any bennies. So this will come up later, I think. But still get back for some hobo days. Yeah, I was the what is it when you're like the parade marshal?
Mm-hmm.
Some years ago, I and quite a few hobo day chairmen were asked back to come back and be marshal. So yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Were you ever marshal like in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, probably early 2000s. It's
Okay.
been a few years, yeah.
Well, I was probably riding horse toward the end of that, crapping on your streets up
Very,
there.
very likely, because there were quite a few of us. I got to ride in the bummobile because at that time I was one of the elders, and I still am. So yeah, you were probably bringing up the rear.
Yeah, they
Okay.
they had us toward the back,
Yeah,
but
could have very well been.
yeah, one of the last times I was there was with one of my part-time guards people,
Yeah.
Greg Gadboy. He lives out in Portland now. I
Okay.
drove out and saw him a year ago, but it was cold, and
Yeah.
we had gotten there, and that's when they mandated that you had to have your own pooper scoopers.
Yes.
They didn't just come behind and get all of it like the city.
I mandated that for my parade chairman because as hobo day chairman, I had all these people that were that, and that was one of them. I said,
Yeah, because usually they just have us at the end, and then the city would follow and gather it all up.
Precisely.
So you cost me $20. No, Greg and I, we had this other group there, and we didn't hear about that before we got there.
Oh,
so
my.
I just rode up to this other group and I said, gave him $20. Says, hey, you mind if your pooper scoopers go right behind us? We'll stay back from you ways, so
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
part of your group. But So I said, yeah, we can do that. So,
Well,
yeah.
you guys are the most respected guys there were then were those scoopers. Honest to goodness, I was chairman 2 years in a row because of an academic thing with the chairman, and I was vice chairman, so I stepped up. So I was 2 years in a row. But anyway, the second year, I mean, it snowed. This is 66, I think, 65 and 66. It was a miserable night, cold and snowy, and the guys that had to go out and paint the white line for the floats and so forth, they had a little bit too much.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, heating and warming up. The line wasn't good. They were working in the snow. So wonderful experience. So yeah, I decided I was a slow learner, so I'd stay at State, and I stayed there for 7 years.
On scholarship?
Yeah, my last 2 years in pharmacy school, my fourth and fifth year, I got an Air Force scholarship, and it was given to two students, and it was really quite nice because I was not married at the time, but my fifth year we were, and so I got tuition, books, fees, supplies, equipment. It was how it was written, and $50 spending money a month. And I told you after we got married, then that $50 paid for our new mobile home that we bought.
Yeah, you surprised Di with
Yes,
a home.
That's right.
A mobile home.
Yep, a mobile home, and yeah, it was a nice scholarship, which anybody out there that are veterans know that paying in time, paying grade, etc., was accumulating as I was in grad school. So it accumulated my fifth year of pharmacy, and then 2 years of grad school. And then in grad school, I had a teaching assistantship. And I was deferred from the Air Force going in because I had a lottery number of 25, and then I went Air Force because I was teaching. I taught some nursing pharmacology and some toxicology as I was going to grad school. So, yeah, those nice benefits, and I was getting paid for that. So, yeah.
And ROTC time.
And ROTC time, absolutely. So, yeah.
What was that like back then? What was required of you?
Go to class. I was...
Was it one class per week, or one class that would meet 2 or 3 times a week?
It was 2 classes, I think, a week. Yeah, I believe that's all it was. And then I didn't have to go I'd done that my third and fourth year, so I didn't have to go my fifth or during grad school.
Right.
So, which was fine. You know, I think I was probably the last master's degree that South Dakota State gave in pharmacy.
Pharmacy.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because the ROTC, I've got a couple buddies that went through that, high school buddies, real close classmates.
Sure.
And, you know, it's not always grad students that go to ROTC.
Right.
So it's designed to be done, you know, at a bachelor's level kind of deal. So you said you had a couple experiences with ROTC. There's kind of a officer basic training portion of that, but what else?
Oh, we got to go to survival school, and we got to go.
You said.
Got to, yes, we did, and get our head shaved and wait for the pings, and yeah, it was interesting. It was in Richards Grabauer Air Force Base, which used to be in Kansas City, and there was plenty of woods around there for them to send us in for survival school, and I could never bring myself to eat the snakes because there were a lot of those, and guys would, because we were basically given a survival knife and a cup, and had been pre-taught how to make our own evaporation water catcher and so forth. Sleeping in a parachute, that's all we got was a piece of a parachute. But also, you know, at that same, I got a T-33 ride, an F-105. I'm pretty sure it was a 105, which was a supersonic jet at the time. That was a huge honor for me because they only picked one out of each squadron to make that flight, and memorable, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. How memorable?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's interesting. Reveille and.
Do you remember how many G-forces you pulled during your flight?
I don't. I know enough that I got such a severe headache because I couldn't Valsalva, couldn't.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was hard on the ears, but
Was it hard on the stomach
oh
also?
yeah, I had the bag. I never need that,
Yeah.
I haven't vomited since. That was a memory that I wasn't going to repeat. So, but yeah, it was okay. A friend of mine, we rode down together in my old car, and Mike Buss, big man, tight end for South Dakota State University football team, and yeah, we were in different squadrons, but we got to be pretty good friends, and yeah, he was again some of my memories of Vietnam come back now because of the friends I lost, and so forth. But maybe we can get into some of that.
Oh yeah. We're going into that, and
Yeah.
we're kind of going chronologically. But
Yeah,
if something comes to mind, we can hop all over. So don't worry about that.
Okay.
Don't worry about that at all.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Jim.
so the when I was talking with Al Sandvig, we talked about the SEER training,
Yeah, oh,
and that
sure.
was pre-Vietnam as well for him, not for me.
Yeah.
So you did your extra training, your ROTC training during school year, but then you do the basic training portion, the SEER portion in the summer. How
Right.
long was your SEER traiing? You remember?
Could it have been a month or 6 weeks? Could it have been that long?
That would have been real long. But did you do a POW portion of that
Oh, yes.
resistance training?
Oh,
and all
yes.
that? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. I think mine total was like 3 weeks.
I can't remember that for sure.
Yeah. That was a while ago for you.
That had to be in, 1960 something.
Just as far as being in the woods, you remember, was it like 2-3 days worth in the woods
At
itself,
least,
or maybe a week?
At least. And we had they were there somewhere, who was monitoring this, but we had no idea where they were.
Yeah.
And we ended up having to have a blue and a red team or something, and then one day we're supposed to escape. I mean, I don't know if you
Right.
had to do that, but
They
to teach.
we had a class the day before going into the POW camp and talked about objectives and things like that. And there was the opportunity to escape, because SEER stands for survival,
Right.
evasion, resistance, which is a POW camp,
Right.
and then escape. So
Yeah.
you're urged to find a way to, but you also have to weigh all the options of what's going to happen if you do.
Right.
What's going to happen to you if you get caught?
Yeah.
What could possibly happen to your teammates when they're left behind and
Yeah.
they know you're gone? But
Yeah.
it's really good training.
Oh, I understand. I think maybe some of that stuff I know you probably have more vivid memory of it than I did.
Yeah,
It
not
wasn't
really.
It wasn't that tough for me because I was, kind of a kid that hunted and trapped, and I archery hunted, and I learned that in college and so forth. So
Yeah, the outdoor portion was pretty interesting, and like with us, and it was Air Force as well.
Right.
And this was out in Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
But we had maybe a huge class of like 100, and then you'd do like 4 or 5 days worth of academics, learning how to improvise, making things out of your harness, parachute,
Right.
learning about sustenance, water procurement, food procurement, and then you'd get ready to go out in the woods the next week, and they would split you into elements of 10. And then we were scattered throughout the mountains. They'd take us out on buses.
Sure.
And so you would do 2-3 days worth in your element of 10, and then, making different types of shelters with parachute
Correct.
and ponchos
Right.
and all that. And then they would break us up into teams of 2 where we had to navigate to get from here to here to here,
Righty.
and encountering the partisans, which is basically the Underground Railroad people. And they can treat you just as bad as your captors, because they don't want to be able to be identified. So you're not supposed to look them in the eye. They'll probably give you some food, but they're the ones that are going against the powers that be to help get you
Out.
back to safety.
Yep.
But they don't want to get killed doing it, but they're chancing it.
We
kinda
didn't do
deal.
it quite that way. When did you do it?
This was probably about summer of '87.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
Back when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, right.
We just go how we feel mentally. Right?
Yeah,
So you
there
felt
you
like
go.
a teenager
Yeah,
back
yeah.
then. Yeah, and then the last week was more like parachute landing falls, the checklist, like if you had to bail out of an aircraft, the checklist, post egress, which is what they call it. So egressing an aircraft, you jump out, get your parachute, do all your checklist stuff, where you're landing in the water, on the ground, how to steer, and they're just round, like cargo chutes.
Yeah.
The C9 canopy is just a big round, and so it's hard to steer. So are you going to, fall into trees? Are you going to hit power lines? If you can't avoid it, how do you do that?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So the third week was split up into 2 or 3 different classes based on that. Yeah. So it was 3 weeks for us.
Did you do altitude chamber?
Yes,
rides
I
and
did.
So forth.
I did, and I did it when they still took us up to 45,000 feet.
Oh yeah.
And this is about you, but I guess I got a couple experiences
I
here.
did that.
And
Paris, Texas. Yeah.
Yep, and they used to have quite a few more chambers around than they do now. I did mine in Omaha, and so they had the tube, and then like a dozen of us, and dozen to 14, 6, 7 of us each on the side. So you have to pre-breathe oxygen for 30 minutes, and then they start bringing you up into altitude, which is decompressing the chamber. And it was already decided that the guy in this seat over here was going to be the one person that they would have take off their mask at 45,000 feet to see what the onset was. And it was pretty quick.
Absolutely.
And they have their whole paper, their whole list of symptoms and things. Well, when it came time for that, they pointed at me and said,
"You didn't know
take
that?
your mask off."
You didn't know that ahead of time?
And I was like, wrong corner. It was
no,
that guy in the other corner.
Yeah.
And they're like, take your mask off. And they knew I was a life sport person, not a pilot also. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe wanted to punish me or something. But anyway, I took the mask off, and it's just hanging there. And, I mean, you start getting the onset pretty quick.
Hypoxia.
And, I always said if I can choose a way to die, that would be it.
Yeah,
Because,
it's over.
it's just, it's painless. But the onset was really quick. And so they're like, and, your regulator has 3 levers on it, 100% emergency, blah, blah, blah. It's called gang loading. And they're yelling at you, gang load your regulator, gang load your, get your mask up.
Make no sense.
And I just was trying, and I was like, so they come over, one guy came over, put the mask up, and I reached up and grabbed it, and I was getting ready to put the bayonet in the receiver here. So the dude turned and walked away, maybe thinking I had it okay because I was a life sport guy. I was used to that equipment. And as soon as he turned away and walked away, I went, ugh, and the mask fell away. And then like 3 guys came rushing up to me. So if you've noticed anything about me in the past here, that's why, the lack of oxygen.
We can go into that when I interview you. Okay. Yeah, I know, but
But it was
45,000
45,000
for us
feet.
in Paris, Texas.
So if you go down, now they maybe take it to 30, if that, or 25. But they took all of us at like 20 to 22, and everybody took it off, and then you had your paper. Did you have to do like math problems,
yes.
look at color wheel, all that?
Yep.
So what the point of the matter is, people are supposed to do a check mark next to the symptoms that they feel, because we're all different. And that's so like the pilots, navigators, all that, if they're flying and something goes wrong with the oxygen system, then they will know to do something.
Yes, this is what's happening,
Yeah, so...
That's
so
interesting.
it was pretty interesting, but that 45,000, that was nuts.
That was dangerous.
I was not prepared for that.
No. They didn't prepare us for that either, and most of us passed out or got close to it,
Did you do rapid decompression?
No.
Yeah, that's where, you had the main tube, but then you had the little entry port. So they would decompress the main tube with nobody in it, and then 2 people and an instructor would be in the entry one, that was at regular pressure. And it would be a big bang. They would just hit a button, and then boom, it would open up a port between the 2. So it would instantly get foggy, and you were instantly at high altitude. So then you had to do your emergency procedures for that as well. That was pretty interesting.
That was the intent of that.
Yeah.
Huh?
And they don't do that anymore.
If you're bailing out or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, if your aircraft loses pressurization like that, you'll know what's going on if it gets foggy all of a sudden and you hear a bang.
Yeah. When you're bailing out, you should still have some help.
Yes.
You're hoping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what other training did you have, like in the summertime for your ROTC training? Or, yeah, you got to fly, you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And really, that was it. That was that summer camp, at Richards Grabauer. There was nothing other than that. And once I completed that, I was officially commissioned, in fact, commissioned upon graduation. And that's why I got the extra pay and grade when I made captain after 6 months of active. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no other stuff like that, I guess. No more marching. I was in on the drill team when I was a sophomore or junior. That was a hoot. We get to sophomore. We flew to Phoenix, Arizona, and competed. And it was Air Force drill teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stay in the big motels that none of us had ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So you graduated and you had a master's in pharmacology?
Right. Pharmacology, yeah, science of drugs.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you were directly in the Air Force right after that? So then where did you go?
Yes. In fact, they were going to, Dr. Briggs, South Dakota State University, asked for another deferment for me from the Air Force, and they gave it to me because I was teaching, quote, unnecessary classes like toxicology and pharmacology and nurse. But when I got my assignment, and I could have turned it down, it was at Tactical Air Command in Langley Air Force Base. And I talked to the ROTC officers. Oh, that's a really good assignment, Mr. Mettler. That's a headquarters, and you'll be in charge of the hospital there. So that's where I went first, was to Langley Air Force Base, close to, what's the big naval? I mean, that's the big naval.
Like Annapolis?
No, I can't remember.
Or that's way north.
Yeah, but anyway, it's Langley Air Force Base, which is where all the CIA stuff is done and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So training, yeah, and it was a wonderful assignment. Yeah, only stayed there 6 months, and nobody gets moved every 6 months. But that's when I got the call from the Air Force and the Navy to teach pharmacology. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which took me to the finest place in the world, and that's Wichita Falls, Texas.
Wichita Falls. I wondered if that's what you're.
Yeah.
Shepherd Air Force Base.
Shepherd Air Force Base, and this was the very first. I taught in the very first PA physician assistant program in the United States, and that was organized by the Air Force and the Navy and the University of Nebraska. And so I was on the staff, like I said, with University of Nebraska as a consultant for teaching pharmacology to potential PA programs that they start there. But they did that because of the shortage of young doctors that were somehow or other getting out of being drafted, and a shortage of them. So this is during Vietnam. That was started in 1971 at Wichita Falls at Shepherd Air Force Base. So it was really an opportunity. My wife thought she married a professor and not a farmer, but I got enough teaching in like a 6 weeks period than I would have in about 4 or 5 years of teaching at a university, because we taught 6 hours every morning, 6 a.m. to noon, and it was really, a challenge for those students. I had Air Force, Navy, and University of Nebraska students, so there were some civilians. So we had some leeway as to how we approached these students, and I pioneered, quote unquote, it was a quote that when I got a commendation award for that, I pioneered computer assisted instruction. Computers were still IBM cards, a few thousand cards, and you had a program. And I had a staff of about 6 people help me with that. I wrote the synopsis, or I wrote the textbook that my students were going to study, and then they could self-pace themselves and go to the computer at a section at a time, and learn that and take the exam to continue. And those programs ended up at Johns Hopkins Medical School, Southeastern Medical School in Dallas, and I don't know if they ever did it at Nebraska or not, but yeah, I wrote that because I thought the students could self-pace themselves. They were under such stress, but if they got times where they could do this, so it was really quite a challenge for me.
Was the computer portion in the cards just for the test? Or
Yeah, no,
that wasn't,
no,
or was
whole,
that study product as well?
The studying product too, and honest to goodness, those people were busy. That were working for me as civilians were busy programming that. And you know what the downfall, or what the not really a downfall, the difficulty was getting a terminal. A terminal was like, a great big machine that. Maybe they had 6 Air Training Command, and at that time, maybe 6 or 10 at the most. So to find time to get those students to get on that terminal was really a challenge.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, 2.5, 3 years of my life there of teaching.
Now, you mentioned Langley. You were what, about 25 years old there?
Probably, yeah.
And didn't you do something for the Red Cross while you were there?
Oh, yes, that's interesting. And that still sticks with me today. I think you'll see why. The pharmacy area itself, normally in a hospital, is locked up at the back door. Only a few people have immediate access, including the hospital director, the commander of the base. And so we called it our locked door. And the people that could knock on the door and show us an ID were the families of the POW and MAI troops. And they could request a Red Cross package, and they could have items that they thought, whether it was aspirin or an ointment or something for, eczema, foot, whatever they wanted. The challenge for us is that none of it could be labeled with anything that reflected that it came from the United States. So if it was a tablet, we'd have to scratch off something off the tablet before we put it in a bottle. If it was an ointment, we'd have to peel the label off and put a generic label on it saying that this is bacitracin. Okay. And over the years at rallies, and there were a lot of them for MIAs and POWs, I recognize those wives and those families and remember them, but no idea if they recall what they did in my pharmacy. But it was an honor for us to be able to help them. We thought maybe it was going elsewhere, but Red Cross took it. They took care of it. Yeah. Yeah. So that still brings some sad memories for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were only 25 years old.
I know it.
With that kind of position.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I took them in with open arms and was thankful I wasn't one of them, obviously. Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah, no doubt. What other memories do you have of Langley? So now you said you would be running the hospital when you got there. Did that mean just the pharmacy in the hospital?
The pharmacy in the hospital. Yeah. I was just a captain. There were a lot of majors and light colonels and colonels that were sitting at the front desk, but that was fine. I mean, that's what most of us were. Yeah. I was probably going to go because the director of pharmacies, it was a female, a full colonel, and she was stationed in D.C., and I had to go take her upon request. She was not married, but get my best mess dress on and go to Washington, D.C. and take her to a banquet. And she liked me. And I think I was going to Saigon. Saigon might have been my next assignment if pharmacology hadn't come up.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was a big hospital. And so, life has its little, yeah.
Right. Do you have any other Langley memories you want to put out there?
Not that I can think of.
We can always come back if something.
Yeah,
If something comes to mind, we'll just jump all over.
Well, we lived in Newport News, and the riots had just burned that city practically. So Di and I were, I mean, these central United States, pretty naive about what's going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are going nuts around you.
Yeah.
Man. So then you went to Shepherd,
Yep.
and you were teaching there. Was that the mainstay of that
Absolutely.
whole
That
deal?
was it. I would go moonlight downtown because I had all this extra time after noon. I'd go, and it was frowned upon, but it wasn't illegal to go moonlight and work as a pharmacist. My wife taught. She started teaching at Langley. She found a teaching job for that short period of time we were there. We went to Shepherd Air Force Base, and then she taught at a private school, and I would do some moonlighting and make some extra money. So we'd bought the farm by then. We had purchased the farm in 1971 then from Di's grandmother. So I was trying to pay the farm expenses before by then, having lived in 2 or 3, quote, bigger cities than we were used to, we'd pretty much figured out we'd go back to Canton and try to make a living back there. Mm-hmm. But at Shepherd Air Force Base, I got my private pilot's license.
Oh, nice.
Busiest airport in the United States. Everybody looks at me, no way. Oh, yes. We were training Vietnam pilots there at the same time.
Yep.
And there were a lot of them.
They still train pilots at Shepherd.
Is that right?
Yeah, Wichita Falls, Texas.
Yes, absolutely. Is that right? That's interesting.
Yep, they have multiple places, but that is one of them.
Oh, it was very busy.
It's like the initial training before they find out what they go on to
Sure.
from there.
Well, I was never really privy to that, but, I sure had a lot of exposure to a lot of young doctors that were teaching classes too and so forth. Mm-hmm. Make rounds with those sometimes. That was fun.
Right.
Make rounds with the young doctors and teach them about drugs and as to what they should be prescribing. And I really enjoyed that. If I could have been a pharmacologist in a hospital, which they have now, that will help physicians determine what medications to use, I'd have probably still been in the pharmacy career.
Yeah, well, and they need that expertise to help them along because they have to know so much to try to not over-medicate or have something adversely affect another. I just couldn't imagine being in that world.
No, it's huge. And these young doctors, I mean, they're really thankful for that. And I made good friends doing that. Mm-hmm. And, we had our 2 children were born at Shepherd.
Okay.
And then the last, Katie, was born in Omaha at SAC, which was my next assignment.
Yep, same as my oldest daughter. Cost me $22.
Oh yeah, you overpaid. I was $3 and $7 or something.
Yeah, mine was an '86. So.
Yeah, well, yeah. These kids I have are really old. I was married during recess, of course, but I'm a youngster.
Yeah.
So,
what did you do with your pilot license?
Absolutely nothing. Thought I was going to have a runway back on the farm. Then I realized how much an aircraft costs and how much it costs to keep up and put in a hangar. Just did some recreational flying and so forth.
And your land back here is a little more than $3 an acre.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose. Maybe it has as many rocks, but no. It was one of those dreams.
I think there is a little airstrip.
Oh, right
south
by
of me.
There's one right
got
next
one
to
by
me.
you?
Right next to me. Okay. Yeah. Retired policeman from Harrisburg.
Ah.
Retired there, and he has an airstrip. Built his own aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how long did you fly then? Did you...
Very little once I got back. I flew from Offutt to T Airport a few times just to come home to check the farm that I was now going to live at, and then the last years that last year that we owned the farm, we came up to the farm quite often, drive up and work on things, but never really pursued it any longer.
Yeah, it's tough to keep that going.
It is.
It takes money, time.
It does, and both of which were short when we decided
life takes over.
Yeah,
and we didn't mention but this also has to do with flying. Didn't they? Did they ask you to be a navigator, or you're trying to be a navigator?
No.
Or what was the navigator story?
When we tested initially,
Okay.
ROTC when you came in, and then they just give you essentially a surprise test. I didn't pass the eyesight for pilot, the intelligence side of it, but the physical side of it said, well, you could still be a navigator. And I never, ever pursued that
Never had
or was asked
inkling.
to. It was just, that's kind of the divisions they came, and it was better than combat and NOM. So, I mean, totally. Yeah. But, while I was in college, one of my dear friends, there were 4 of us. You might remember Bob Trum, owning Trum Pharmacy, I don't know, in Canton, and a guy from Pierre, and then a guy from up around Clear Lake or Timber Lake. We did archery tournament shooting. We call ourselves the Gruesome Foursome. We take on pistol teams and rifle teams. We shoot our
Really?
Yeah, we shoot our target, and they'd shoot theirs. We never lost. One of those guys' name was Jerry Swayze, and this is my salute to him because he was one of the first casualties in Nam in '66.
Oh, really?
Went to his funeral. He was flying a chopper and took a round up through the chopper, set the chopper down, everybody lived but him.
Oh, wow.
And so, there were other friends that passed in Nam, that when I go to the wall, whenever it's traveling, it brings back some fond memories, but some certainly sadness. So yeah, it affected all of us at that age. Yeah.
If I had a wish for other people, I'd wish that everybody could get to that mall in DC and see all the memorials. All of them.
Maybe they'll let me go on an air flight or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, they're the honor flight.
Honor flight. Yeah.
Yeah, because they've been into the Vietnam era for quite some time now.
Have they?
On those honor flights.
Oh, well, we're bumping 80.
Yeah, should be able to Google something
and find that
on
out.
that.
I never thought I was really qualified because I had a white coat on or a tie on, and I was support, but a long ways from support. But so there's more deserving. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And
so none of your service was overseas at all?
No. Nope. I'm a veteran of a foreign war, just never got there. Thank you.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that, for sure. Is there anything more you want to say about your military service?
I don't.
At this point?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Nope.
So then we're going to get into the civilian side of the house.
I guess so.
What did you roll right into when you got back home?
I had bought cows before like in May or June from an Ulrichsen, and there's a lot of Ulrichsens that live along our road. He was retiring, bought his cow herd, and when I came back in September, I took over those. I got out September 13. You never forget that, I guess. Discharge in 1974, so that's 50 years ago plus, and started to buy my own equipment. Although it was old and small compared to anything now in these many years, and did some crazy things. I was the first one to try narrow soybeans, 7-inch soybeans. Timing was awful because we didn't have the chemicals to control the weeds.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, so but then, the cattle business, I was in that, and then went to the Sioux Falls Farm Show, bought a Simmental bull when people didn't know what any exotic, quote, European breeds were. And then a friend of mine that was teaching the GI How to Farm course, GI Bill, which had a lot of students, was Paul Lee from Inwood, Iowa. And Paul called me and said, how serious are you about those Simmental cattle? I said, well, they're really good. He says, why we should buy a herd and run them together. And ultimately we did. And, again, it's a memory that has obvious sadness to it because Paul was in Vietnam and the Tet Offensive. Yeah, that the book was about that, and it has a picture of him in there. His little mustache. Sure, he was a second lieutenant, maybe a first, but he's sitting in a huge shell hole with some other GIs, and obviously bathing himself in Agent Orange, and he died quite a few years ago of the effects of Agent Orange. But that's how I got into the purebred cattle business.
So you're just thumbing through the book and you saw that picture of him in there?
Absolutely. Well, I was interested in some of the things, and we were in Barnes and Noble or something. Di and I were, and I went to that section and I picked that up, and that opened to that page. I still have the book sitting on the dresser at home. That hit pretty close to home too, because there's many more deaths post Vietnam.
It's huge.
Yeah, but anyway, that's a fond memory of how I got into it. But prior to that, I had actually already started in the hog business, and Kip Scott. I don't know if you would remember him, but he was a partner of mine. We started in the purebred landrace business, and we're quite successful at it. And he went through some marriage things, and we split up our partnership, and I took it on myself. But that was in 1978 when I had probably one of the largest farrowing operations in South Dakota, and one of the biggest producers of purebred landrace hogs, and all that went to pieces in the 80s when the farm crisis really hurt. But I was fairly successful in it. Again, not afraid of the innovation. Artificially inseminated some of the first pigs in the United States.
Wow.
And one of the boars was a national champion. And I mean, it just hadn't been done the way it's been done now. But
so you had one of the largest farrowing barns, and now you are sitting in the hog house, probably one of the smallest farrowing barns. This was a 12-crate farrowing barn years ago. 6 crates on each side.
I believe it.
Bought this place from Dean and Annie.
Oh, my.
And yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were here for 9 years, and I asked him, do you want these crates and stuff? And he said yes, So he took all those out. And, that Coors beer sign over there, it was there. There's many others in here now.
Is that right?
But that was there. You couldn't see it because the fly specks were like, centimeter thick.
Of course.
Kind of deal. And
Good
I had to come
hog house,
through and grind the bolts that were left in the floor and stuff so you wouldn't trip on them. And then we just grew into this. So welcome to my farrowing barn, Jerry.
I put 16 of them in an area like this in my big barn. And then there was a lean-to on it, and I put another 18 in there. And so at that time, and these were all pitch clean.
It was all hand cleaning.
Yeah, and so then I built a huge farrowing house and nursery in 1978 or 9, and had 64 farrowing crates in there. Big nursery, 420 sows, 360 sows, maybe 60 replacements, and in those early 80s and late 70s, I was in the top 10 for registering purebred landrace and for transferring. So in other words, the sales were good, but when it got bad so fast.
Yeah, it can turn quickly.
But that was, and my kids, they worked in it. I mean, they would push a feed cart around, and they'd put their little sister in it, and she'd come out just white, and they would feed the sows, and they helped power wash and everything. I mean, they worked hard, and that's why they're not coming back to the farm.
Yeah.
They'd had enough.
Yeah, for 8 years through high school and into college, younger. 8 years part-time on a hog farm.
Really?
Benny Quam down north of Elk Point down there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
QUAM, was it not?
QUAM. Yep. Benny Quam, and his dad was Norrell. Norrell Quam. Those are the two. Benny's the one I worked for the most.
There was a Quam in South Dakota State that I knew, so could have been. Who knows?
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. And One thing to go back to,
Yeah.
you mentioned Paul Lee.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't there something else that he started something?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
What was the deal on that?
Well, there was a GI program for all of course, any veteran, and he started, had to be somebody that was willing to teach a farming course.
That's what it
teach us
was.
guys how. I mean, he taught us. He got us in whether it was welding, whether it was changing oil on a tractor, whether it was a grain bins. We went to the John Deere plant. We attended farm shows. He had people always coming in and instructing us. I don't care if it was about farm insurance, but he did just a super job of that, and we got our GI Bill benefits that way, which was a monthly stipend of some sort, and I don't remember, but it was always handy to have that. Al, who you interviewed,
Al Sandvig.
Al Sandvig and I we rode together, of course, drove together all the time because we live right next to each other, and another neighbor, Donnie Paulson. We'd go to those, and the fun ones when they were out of town, and then we had to be on our honor. Well, sometimes we visited some places up in Sioux Falls that, I mean, there was a teaching moment, I'm sure, but but anyway.
But Don Paulson was involved. Yeah, because he's done a podcast here as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
It's sad to say he's in hospice
I
in the
know
VA
he
right
is.
now.
I know. He chose to go into hospice at the VA. So
Yeah, a couple weeks ago,
I
chose
know.
the hospice portion of it, and
yeah.
So go visit him quite a bit. He's actually doing pretty good right now.
Oh,
so.
good, because I'm under the care of the VA and I'm
Mm-hmm.
tickled to death with it. I just absolutely am
Yep.
thankful for it. Yeah,
You bet. Yeah, anybody gets a chance to go up there, it only takes a few minutes to stop in
absolutely.
and visit people.
I shall do that. Yeah, Lynn Rodway was up there for. He said they got me in there and they locked me up. He said they wouldn't let me leave. And I said, yeah, sure, Lynn.
Yeah, I went up there and visited him once too.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He was still kicking pretty good
I know
and
it.
stuff. And then he's out. He got out after that.
I
so
know it, yeah.
I'm learning more about what hospice really means.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the end, but there's
It's not always just 2-3 weeks and that's the end. It's
No.
not always that way. So,
quite often though. Yeah.
yeah, but it can it changes the meds that they give
Yeah.
you and things like that. And
Yeah, but that GI schooling for me was
Mm-hmm.
good. For one thing, I liked, shame on me, the academics of it, whether it was spray and, I mean, if these guys want to know about the toxicology of, the phosphate organic insecticides, then they could call on me,
Mm-hmm.
but because of that. But I knew, I said I didn't like to fail, but I went after things, even farming. But I could hang my hat here or there and make a good day's wages as a pharmacist. And when the farm crisis hit in the middle to late 80s, I lost several neighbors. They left.
Right.
Some by choice, some had to. They went to town and maybe worked for $1.85 an hour. And as a pharmacist, I was making much better than that. So it helped us to survive because we fought to survive.
80s were tough on farmers.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we marched to Pier and we tried all those good things, but I don't know if we ever did any good. We still had to go farm.
Yeah. So how often would you do those classes and would he schedule something like once a quarter or more often
Oh
than
no,
that?
once a week.
Once a week?
Once a week for maybe like a semester.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we went most of the time. It always started in the fall, just like the school season. It was conducted like that. He had to do a lot of homework just to get speakers and something as simple as lining up the high school for welding lessons.
Right.
He would do that for us. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Because I guess when we were sitting over here, you were saying you're getting some kind of credit for that or something. So I should have figured it was more than once a quarter.
And Paul, one of his sons is farming just north of Inwood on the farm that he was farming. So yeah.
Yeah, and then you rolled into the purebred business?
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah,
or was there some time between
pretty
that?
much, and it's the same old thing. I said, I'm raising these cattle, doing a pretty good job. I mean, learn as you go. But I take them to town, and I would have to say, what'll you give me today? Well, they shoot a number at you at the auction, and you'd get what they were paying. I had no choice. So I thought, well, the purebreds, at least a portion of them, I should be able to say, this is what I'll take.
Right.
Not what will you give me, and price those. And if you've earned the value on them, you'll probably get it. So it was kind of an economic move, and it's a tough business to get into too, because there's lots of seasoned, progressive, good purebred breeders in every breed. But we did all right in the Simmental business, and
those were your first purebreds?
First purebreds, yeah. And I decided, and Paul and I, we split up, and it was because I was having to work in town to try to keep everything going. It really did, and so we just went our ways. We sold out and went our way. I'd say harmoniously, yeah. And then in, I guess, 1980, I bought my first Galvy from a breeder in Missouri, and I got kind of really interested in them. I couldn't sell a black Simmental, and I had some black Simmentals. Now they're all black, but I mean, truly had a difficult time selling black Simmentals because they would make some gray cattle when you bred them to all our crossbred cattle that we had, the Herefords or the Charolais and so forth, and nobody seemed to want the grays. But so got those Galvy 15 bred heifers in Missouri from the Cooper brothers, and really liked them, and got heavy into the Galvy breed. 120 cows, I suppose, and became fairly good at it. I mean, I showed them. My kids showed them in 4-H. My wonderful hired man that I had was one of the best fitters in the country that got cattle ready for what I called advertising, and that was getting those cattle out and showing them.
Mr. Doyle Stanger.
That sounds really familiar.
Real familiar.
Best hand I ever had. Absolute best hand. He had the worst boss, and I had the best hand. He was. I mean, his wife and him. I met him at Transova Genetics. He had just stopped in there and was looking for a worker, was working at Transova Genetics, the biggest bovine or cattle embryo transfer company in the world. And he had graduated from the University of Minnesota. I think like the number one judge on the animal livestock judging. I'm getting relaxed.
Just
here.
bring it. Yeah, just take it with you.
Yeah.
We don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, not now. That's for sure. No, you know Doyle well, and
Yeah,
and I speak highly of him. We parted, and he needed to go elsewhere because I was loading him up. We're going to get into some of my travels and the American Galvy Association, my judging and all that, and who'd that leave behind? Yeah. And he was extremely reliable, and they had both their children while they were working for us. Cody and Christina. That's right. So anyway, we might have some photos of him that you might be able to show, but him showing cattle and getting them ready for sales and always added value for me, and he was such a good man.
He is wood burned into the bar just by your left shoulder there. I just thought of that.
Is that right?
That's Doyle Stanger.
But that's on a horsey. Oh yeah, he loved those horses.
Horses, yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, one of his horses was born on my place here.
Oh, for sure.
Yep. Half sister to two of mine, and
is that right?
Jose Molina ended up owning that one. Horse called Black Star.
I'll be darned. Oh yeah. Well, that's the closest I've been to him for quite some time. But yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that we've been going out to the Black Hills for. We've done 28 trips. 28
is that right? Lots
now.
of years. I know.
But he's trucking now, so If he
Yeah.
makes it, it's just like a first
Oh.
day and a half of the first
that right?
weekend, maybe. But
He was doing that when he was working for me.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was fine. I mean, he earned every bit of it. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about a vacation. Yeah, that's a soft spot for us, but yeah, I got some stories there too, but it's okay.
yeah. So, and that's the first time I ever heard the term Gelby. Like I said,
Okay.
I'm not a cattleman.
Right.
I've owned some horses here,
Sure.
small, just a few at a time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what Doyle and I had fun doing was, you're just over here a few miles and you've got the hilly land that you mentioned.
Yep.
And well, I met Doyle in '92 at church.
Okay.
They had like a
Yep.
talent show thing, and we got drug up there to, somebody's going to teach us line dancing.
Oh
And,
my, yeah. We won't mention names.
Doyle and I were like, okay, we get up
Uh-huh.
there. But Michelle was pregnant with, I believe, Christina at the time.
Probably so at
You know.
92. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's just the guys that went up there. So that's where I met Doyle there, and then
Sure.
we hit it off. But when we had I was getting into horses close a little before that, and you were breeding. It was breeding time, so all your cows would be out in the hills, and I'd get off work at the air guard up here, get down here. Summer we had plenty of light. So then I'd haul my horse over there, one of them, and we would go out there, and I'd
Right,
put some
sure.
beers in the saddlebags,
Uh-huh.
Jerry,
Yep.
and we'd go out there and we'd watch your herd for an hour, whatever,
Yep.
and he would keep track of the ones that were mounting.
Yep.
So then we'd bring the entire herd in
Sure.
and separate those off, and then those are the ones that you'd breed the next morning or whatever. So
he
that
would-
was a lot of fun.
I sent him to AI school, and that's not artificial intelligence. It's that's artificial.
I never even thought of that.
Yeah, that's
portion of
artificial insemination. And yeah, he was so good with cattle. I mean, he was like a cattle whisperer. It really was. Not so much with the hogs. Neither was I.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was talking. He told me over here. He says, "Yeah, Jerry wants me to work on hogs." Told me he hired me for cows, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you should have mentioned that to me. I'm a slow learner, but yeah, and I understand him completely. But yeah, he would heat detect those evenings. I guess I knew sometimes when you brought the trailer over and did that. Yeah.
Yep.
But
One night was my birthday,
oh dear,
so I didn't use the trailer to come back here. I reloaded the saddlebags full of beer, and I rode my old mare named Maggie all the way back home.
Get
Watch the
out
sun
of here.
go down over here. Yeah, once I got north to your gravel, she kept trying to turn around. And when she headed west,
Yeah.
she realized, okay,
This
we're
might
heading
be
west.
home.
So I just dropped the reins on her neck and finished the however
you
many
really?
beers I had there and got
Did you
home
ride
just
home in
at
the
dark.
ditch then, or you wouldn't have been up on the road? would
Just
you?
what? Yeah, you just depending on the traffic and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But yeah,
Oh.
that's a memory of mine. That's the
Yeah.
only time I've ever done that.
I've told you I never met a microphone I didn't like. I never met a horse I liked. no, again, a memory of getting.
Well, Doyle and I each came off a horse over there.
Oh.
He doesn't want to remember his, but I was swinging up on Maggie, and I had an old cooler in my hand, and it shook around. She took off, jetted left, and I landed on my forehead, over there. And Doyle, I believe, was riding Budrow, I believe. And to this day, we don't know what happened, but Doyle was just trying to get going quick, and then he just put the brakes on or something, and Doyle came over the
Over
right
the front?
shoulder there, and boy, he was nose to nose with Budrow, and just, he's like, don't you ever. Budrow never did again. I don't
Is that
think.
right? He listened. First horse I knew listened. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm being sarcastic.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So good memories there.
Yeah.
There really were. Yep.
Well, that reminds me of a John Wayne quote in the Cowboys that I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he had to recruit these boys for the cattle drive.
Oh, yes.
Because all the men went to the gold rush.
Yep.
And he said, a cow's nothing but just a leather bag full of trouble. And all the kids are looking at him. Then he says, and a horse ain't much better.
Now I do like that, and I'll concur with that. Yeah, but anyway, so yeah.
And you got him, one more thing on
Yeah,
Doyle, you got him a connection, overseas
Oh
connection.
yeah,
Talk about
that was pretty cool. When I met him at Transova there, because I was I wasn't working for him yet, but I was there to embryo transfer some cattle, and they introduced me to him and everything. And I said, "Oh yeah," that I had been to Australia and so forth. Really, he said, "You got any contacts over there?" I mean, he was I thought he was kidding. And I said, I do. I might be, you want to go? Oh, I'd like to get a work permit and go over there and work. I said, on a station, which is a cattle ranch.
Right.
And, that'd be awesome. So I had friends that had been at my place, actually, the Sullivans, and they ran Herefords and Gelvy. And I'll be darned if you didn't get to go over there and spent a year. He and Michelle.
It was a full year he went?
The honeymooners. Yeah, that's what we teased him about. And Doyle got to spend a year in Australia. Yeah. And that was kind of how I got involved with the Gelvy some more. And then I went over there and judged cattle and so forth. But that's how Doyle got over there.
The only thing I know about that over there is he talked about, all those real cowboys working on the station is like, never wore a brand new cowboy hat. He said they'd have a hat, they'd be walking by, they'd throw it in the cow pen, not pick it up for a week. And then they would go get it, brush it off.
They all look like it. They all look like it. Yeah.
Yeah. The second story I know with Doyle and Michelle is that she would walk the, 3/4, 1 mile, all the way down the driveway to the post office, waiting for letters from home.
Oh,
and
that's
she got one. She
had
wouldn't
to
carry it back. Right away. She'd sit there and read it. It's pretty homesick. You're young.
It had to be lonely. I was never in the outback. I traveled a lot of Australia. I was never in the outback. It was always the next place over. That's how they treat that. Oh, we don't live in the outback. So it was kind of fun. Yeah. How'd you get to Australia? Is that what you're going to ask? No.
Well, you mentioned the term El Presidente. I'm going to drag some of this out of you. You've had a lot of honors.
Oh, my.
And you've had some positions. And
I've been
starting
blessed.
from the top here, and I have to take notes, on some of these,
Okay.
the Al Sandvig, some of the other guys, Hall of Fame, and then the Pork All-American, and just go ahead and go from there. Just explain some of the honors that you've had, and and go from there.
This isn't the easiest thing to do, but it's okay. There are fond memories, obviously.
Yeah.
But in about 1983 or 84, I was named the Pork All-American from South Dakota, and every state picks one person, and then they have a big convention and banquet in St. Louis or someplace. And in 83, probably because I had one of the first hog complexes, and fairly successful in the landrace business, because that summer my one boar that I artificially inseminated, I think I said that, was a champion in the United States. I guess it would be, at least amongst the hog people. And so I was named Pork All-American, and the South Dakota Pork Council had to make that decision. And that same year, that early January or in December, I was elected to the American Gelvy Association Board of Directors. They have 12 directors, and so more than 3 or 4 annual meetings in Denver, and I became a bona fide Gelvy promoter for sure.
What year was that when you got promoted?
Well, I bought my first Gelvy in 80, and then it was in 83. I'm pretty sure that it was in 83 that I was elected to the board, because it's a 4-year term, and then you can run another 4. And then 87, I was elected the president of the American Gelvy Association, and that's where I learned some of the things that allowed me to travel worldwide. But like I said, the Foreign Agricultural Service, the FAS, was available to breeders even anybody that had an idea or a promotion that had never been done before in a foreign country, and if you could send in a brief reason for your trips and so forth, they would be totally paid for if you came back and summarized it. So in the Gelbvieh Association, we got wind of this, and we said, well, our breed really hasn't been promoted. It's a German breed, hasn't been promoted in South America. So a Brazilian who became a very dear friend of mine and even partnered with me and showed up in Denver. And it was about his third trip to Denver to the National Stock Show. His name was Arno Huber. And Arno lived in Mato Grosso do Sul, which is the name of a state in Mato Grosso in Brazil. His parents owned a hotel on the Copacabana beach in Rio de Janeiro. And he was taking over his dad's ranch. And Arno had 6,000 cows and about 30,000 acres of cleared jungle. And he was doing some breeding with German genetics, with Gelbvieh and Red Angus and so forth. And he came to us and invited us down to meet with Brazilian officials and Brazilian herd book leaders that kept a herd book. So the executive director of the American Gelbvieh Association and I, as president, we went to Brazil, and Arno took us everywhere, and Porto de Negro, Curitiba, a lot of places where there were shows or expositions. And so Jim and I, the executive director, went there for quite a while, and Arno chauffeured us around, and that's how I made my first trip to Brazil. That was one of 3 or 4.
Were there many Gelbvieh cattle in South Dakota when you were getting started, or you're the pioneer on that?
Yeah, pretty much a pioneer. I think the first ones were AI'd artificially with German semen that came through Canada in
Back to the German thing. Right?
Absolutely, 1972. Yeah, I can sprechen Sie Deutsch ziemlich gut. Yeah, but yeah, and a lot of, like Charlie's, I think, might have come in 70. Simmentals in that same area with genetics with semen, and so the Gelbvieh were kind of the last, and with that, had some catch up to do, and possibly still do. I mean, as far as numbers, for sure, that are registered and so forth. But I got, quite involved with the Gelbvieh breed, obviously. Yeah. And
you won an award for that, I believe, right?
Yeah, I was Member of the Year, I think in 89 or something like that, that might be right. And that was pretty cool. Obviously, my daughter, I wasn't going to go. I'd gone to Denver every year for so many years. I said, and the weather was bad. I said, and unbeknownst to me, they had called my wife and said, you got to get Jerry to come. And so my daughter Susan was the Gelbvieh Junior Ambassador for the Gelbvieh Association, which she was named at a junior show in Oklahoma or something. And so she talked me into going and taking her, and that's when I was surprised with the Member of the Year award from the Gelbvieh Association. And then it took another...
What was that, before or after your trip to Kentucky?
You
have a picture.
Describe
that picture.
Yes, geez, yes. I've got a really nice big picture with the 2 friends that I'm with sitting on those steeples. Yeah, as president of the American Gelbvieh Association, I chose or could choose where the board of directors would meet because they came from all over the country. We'd always end up in Denver, and I said, well, why don't we go in November to Louisville, Kentucky, to the NILE, Northern International Livestock Exposition, or Northern America. There's 2 Niles, NAILE and NAILE in Montana. Anyway, we went to Louisville, Kentucky, and where was I going with this? Okay.
The sitting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. old man.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Where was
I
I?
have notes.
Yeah. Well, we had our board meeting, and there was some free time. And it was like a 3-day event for our board meetings. They were ridiculously long, but we decided we'd go to the Kentucky Derby Downs, Louisville. Yeah, but of course it wasn't the race. There were races going on, but it wasn't Kentucky Derby. That's in May, and we my legal counsel, and we all had a legal counsel. All these associations have to have them. Was from big man from Oklahoma, wonderful person. He always drove a big Cadillac, and we decided we're going to go to the racetrack. What's the name of the Downs?
Churchill Downs.
Oh yeah, that would be it.
That's the one.
Told you I can't remember things. Went to Churchill Downs and pulled through the main gate, and the guy stopped us because we were going to go in the VIP parking lot. And he, no, you can't. And Ed, the lawyer, he says, "Well, this is the president of the American Gelbvieh Association." You think this guy had any clue that was anything at all? But he said, "Well, pull right in here." So we pulled in there. So we thought we had free reign of the place, and we got our mint juleps, and we decided, well, really good thing is there's a stairway that goes to the top of the Churchill Downs. I mean, it's still there, and the steeples are still there. We're standing up there in the steeples with a mint julep and looking down on the racetrack and watching the horse race from up there. Totally illegal. There were all kinds of signs and chains we stepped over to go up there, but very, very fond memory with two gentlemen, one from Oklahoma and one from Don Matthews from Missouri, and yeah, it was
Made for a good photo.
It did. It was a wonderful memory. Yeah.
Yep. So, and you mentioned Transova. So you ended up working there?
Yeah, I did.
Transova Genetics?
Well, after I got off the board, because
the president was a 4-year term?
Yeah.
You did 1 term?
I was 4 years, and then I did 2 or 3 more years. And this was getting into the late 80s, and financially it's getting tougher.
Sure.
We got no pay for doing this. As they all draw some pay and some per diem now as board members, but association couldn't afford it. So I resigned, and that was perfect. But I came back and still was doing some things with Transova, and I told them about my trips to South America and what I'd done down there, and they said, well, maybe you could do that. And I said, I can get you some money. I know how to go through that. I know the director's name was Snido, I believe, his last name, and got to know him. And so I got money to travel for Transova down there to promote. And then I did, not just beef. It was Piedmontese. It might have been Holsteins. Again, most of these southern companies were only dealing with Canadians because Canadians were easier on the health requirements, and they still had full blood or 100% genetics. And in 1932, the Rome Accord was signed by the leaders of the world, and that stated that for South America that no impure genetics may be introduced into our countries. By the world leader countries, and that impure mean that we'd done some crossbreeding, right, or whatever. And so we went down there to see if we could get that changed, or if we could send some of our full blood genetics that we've produced. The first time when I went with the Gelbvieh Association, and this time when I went with Transova Genetics, I was essentially on my own. And one time I spent a month in the Sydney Hilton. That was not so bad.
Yeah, I suppose.
Expenses were covered. But it was really a tough nut to crack. But we opened some markets, and some of it was sobremesa, which in Portuguese means under the table, that you got these people some genetics some way. They always had a way to getting some of these genetics into their country. across the Uruguay or Paraguay border, and one of the trips to South America, I was on my own. My friend Arno Huber didn't meet me, but a gentleman named Senor Pablo Egidio Martins, the past governor of the state of Sao Paulo, and the city of Sao Paulo is bigger than New York, and he took me to the Jockey Club for dinner, and I met all these people. I had no idea that he was the past governor of the state of Sao Paulo.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I ended up sending seamen down to Brazil for Senor Pablo, and there were some interesting ways to get that there, but it was quite an experience. And when my friend Arno invited me down to Rio, then he picked me up in Rio, and his parents' hotel was right on Copacabana, and Ipanema was across the way. And he says, "You will like these swimming suits on these." He says, "We call it dental floss on the Copacabana beach and so forth." So I said, "Yeah, Arno, that was a good thing."
Oh,
but
man.
So
You mentioned meeting him.
Mm-hmm.
How did you meet Baxter Black,
oh yeah, well,
the cowboy poet?
yeah, the Baxter
Extraordinary.
Black. It is a fun story. Yeah, you got time?
Yep.
We chose Jim Spahn, who was the executive director, AGA. We had to have some entertainment for our banquet for the national convention in Denver. So he got a hold of Baxter Black, and no one really, we have a cowboy poet. I mean, everybody out in the lobby was drinking and thinking, a cowboy poet, what is this? Well, it's pretty early in Baxter Black's career.
Oh, yeah.
And he was absolute hoot. And so the show was the next day, the Galvey show, National Western Stock Show, biggest show in the United States. And Baxter Black was stuck around for that, and then he went up to an executive dining area, and we had a means of getting up there. He was sitting with some friends, and I had carried a champion banner that a friend of mine, Bruce Handel, and a Galvey breeder had won as a champion bull or something other. And I had said, "Baxter, could you sign this for my friend Bruce?" And he said, "Sure." So he sits there, and we're chatting with all the other people, but he signs this for me, and I probably was going to give this to Bruce, and I didn't. It didn't bother me that he was down washing cattle and I was up having hot toddies and a steak. But anyway, I give it to him, and Bruce was terribly upset with me that I violated with this Baxter Black guy.
Oh my gosh.
Violated this banner. I don't know if he still has that banner, Bruce. If you're looking, that was funny as could be that you were so upset with me with Baxter. But a gentleman he was. I mean,
Yeah, no Baxter. He's passed away.
Yeah, I know
a
it.
couple years ago.
Yeah, it probably was
somewhere in there.
Yep.
Yeah, he got big. I mean, he'd be in magazines,
Oh.
Western Horseman magazines,
Everyone.
just everywhere.
Yeah, he was a guest and funny, laugh. Yeah, he was a great guy. A veterinarian,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot of your history. Is there anything else coming to mind at all? Or
Well, the Transova thing is somewhat interesting because of my cross-cultural experiences there. We went down again. Jim and I did. No, it was Arno and I. Anyway, we were going to meet these go to a Mennonite colony. And the Mennonite colony was in the Chaco region of Paraguay. And Chaco means underwater. So they wanted to flee to the United States, the Mennonites, when Hitler was coming into power in the late 30s or probably the late 30s. And the United States wouldn't let them all come in. So Paraguay said, "Come on, you can have this land." Well, it was underwater, but I mean, it's underwater in the monsoon season every year, but the Mennonites figured it out. They called the place Loma Plata. Loma Plata had thousands upon thousands of cattle, all owned by these Mennonites, and they had community centers at the different like 4 different regions. And we went down there, and I met with the president of the Loma Plata group of people. His name is Herr Peter Dirksen, German. And then Irma, and my mother's name was Irma, took care of us. She made sure that Arno and I were royally treated. Anything we wanted, I had to judge their cattle, and then I ended up selling them 100 Gelbvieh embryos for future delivery, and the Mennonites basically were extremely well accepted. And when we went into Asuncion, which is the state capital, with Irma, we got the royal treatment and so forth. So Herr Dirksen, I would communicate with him, speak all in German. And then as soon as they didn't want me to understand them, because I spoke a more guttural or lower German, they'd start talking high German, and they were done with me. But I'd catch some of it, but I did most of the business in German, and they of course spoke German and Spanish, and in Brazil they speak Portuguese, so I had to teach myself a lot of cow talk Portuguese, and I did that. Yeah,
really came through for you.
Yeah. I had taken some Spanish in high school and so forth, but those South American trips, there's so many stories I could tell about them. Yeah.
Well, Jose Molina is a vet at Transova Genetics. He's originally from Venezuela, and he has sent us. This was quite a few years ago, but when you were talking, it was coming to mind that he had sent us a few videos. Us guys, Jose's is in the bar here too, right there.
Yeah.
And it was Latin American guys on horseback, barefoot, and I think a lot of times, they'll have like metal stirrups, and they'll just only have their big toe on the inside portion.
Absolutely.
And they were herding, cattle like through water. Like it was like a foot deep,
and that's
big. I wonder if that's
a Chaco region also, because it'll dry, but the cattle make a living going through those and finding little islands, for the grass and.
Is that a lot of Brahma breeds?
Oh yeah.
Is that the predominant breed?
Well, yeah, it'd be Bos Indicus, which is Brahman, but. Like I got a picture of those. There's seas and seas of, if you were in the air looking down, of white cattle, and they are Nelore, N-E-L-O-R-E. Nelore cattle are about the predominant cattle in Brazil, and they probably still are. But story about those cattle, and a story down in Brazil, Arno had gotten us wanted us to visit a Japanese ranch that was wanting to use Gelbvieh cattle. His name was Iyuki Abe, and this will be funny. When we were flying to this, and we had to leave early in the morning because we had to be back by maybe 4 o'clock. This is summer, winter at home here, because the smoke would be so heavy that you couldn't see the sun from them burning the forests. They would windrow the forest and burn it, clear the forest. And that day was one of the days we were flying. And Iyuki Abe picked us up in his airplane, and we got up and started going quite a ways. And Arno says, "Iyuki," and he says it to him in Portuguese, that I am a pilot. He says, Senor Mettler, you fly? I say, well, here, he says, you just follow the railroad track. And he went to sleep. Honest to goodness, we fought. And I got a picture of the truck that they had to use to clear the airstrip of cattle before we landed. And so we spent time with the Iyuki Abe, and very wealthy. The country is a lot of the haves and have-nots down there. And some years later, Arno and I are texting back and forth, and I said, and how is Iyuki Abe? Oh, Mr. Jerry, he said, he died in an airplane crash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said he was a little careless. And I thought, yeah, I guess so.
Go figure.
Yeah. We went to Iyuki Abe's house for supper. And they turned the dogs out, in front of his house and around his house. And the dogs are Dobermans, and they got free run of the track around the home, because the wealthy can be in trouble. I was in Curitiba, I think, and I was trying to get a big time dairy to start buying some American Holstein genetics. And a gentleman named Mr. Barazzelli picked me up at the hotel, his driver, and we sat in the back, and he tells me in pretty good English that he must take a different route to work every day because the bandits, the robbers. And I said, really? And he said, oh yes, he has pistola. He has pistola in his
anti-terrorism procedures. That's what we were taught.
I mean,
all right. I think we're going to take a quick break here.
Sounds good.
And then we're going to move into some more subjects. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you about Punta Porta. I saw a bank robbery.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yes.
Okay, so we took a quick break there.
Yep.
But you mentioned a bank robbery.
Yeah.
What the heck?
I know it. I still got the empty casings. Anyway, the friend of mine, Arno, who speaks like 4 or 5 languages anyway, but Arno said we have to go to the Chaco region in Paraguay to visit these Mennonite colonies, but the only way we can get there is we got to catch an aircraft in this little village, whatever it was, and then we'll have to stop in Punta Porta, Paraguay, and get a visa for the day. So anyway, we get the airline tickets, and we're sitting in the back of this plane with the chickens and the tires and the orange crates, and not strapped in or anything, but this was our ride. It was a mail. This was our ride to Punta Porta. So we get to Punta Porta, and we have to walk down the street and stuff to see if we can find the guy that we're supposed to get the visa from. And it's getting toward evening, but, late afternoon. All of a sudden, we hear gunshots, literally gunshots, not that far from us, and we don't know what's going on, but there are people running down the street, and it's kind of dirt streets, and we walk. Arno can, of course, talk Spanish fluently too, and he asked him what's going on. Oh, bank robber, and we go to the bank because Arno says, oh yeah, we should go see. And we go into the bank, and there's a great big cement culvert in the corner. I mean, and you got a little mouse hole that they crawl in, and there's the armed guard in there, and he's guarding the Punta Porta bank, but some guy came in to rob it. And we're literally walking down the street, and there are the empty casings. I just pick up 1 or 2 or whatever and put them in my pocket. Evidence.
So
nobody cared.
Is that their version of the vault or something?
Oh, it had to been.
That
or
concrete deal there?
That's security.
Wow.
That's security. Arno, for a while, Arno paid a man to hold his briefcase, handcuffed to him, in line at the bank to exchange cruzados for cruzieros. The inflation was like 1,000% a day. It was awful, and he had to change that money as fast as it was changing.
Wow.
That's the truth. Yeah. I mean, the inflation and I suppose still the corruption is really, really bad, but yeah. So
man alive.
I know. Yeah. But yeah, we on the next year, Dr. Daryl Faber, one of the founders of Transova Genetics, and I went to Paraguay, and we put in 100 of these embryos in the Chaco region of Paraguay. And when we had a tough time getting his microscope through security. And we begged him. And now we weren't even sure if our semen tank of embryos got to them, and it supposedly came in that morning, and they weren't going to let that through security because dangerous,
And that's volatile because you got to keep that frozen.
Oh, geez,
It's got
yes,
a timestamp
absolutely. So we meet with Peter Dirksen and the gauchos, and do you have how many recipient cows do you have available? And we had 100 embryos, so we thought, well, maybe 150. Oh, we have 300 available for you. You just pick and choose. And they got us out in the no man's land somehow, somewhere, and there were hundreds of these cows corralled. And they set up a little trailer. It was enclosed, and the trailer has about a 20-watt light bulb. And that's what I have to manipulate the embryos through solutions to draw them into a pipette. And so I'm manipulating embryos, and outside is a little, like a 1 horsepower, ka-chug, and one guy was keep pouring water on it. It was ka-chugging, and those were my lights, so the lights would go off. And I popped a couple embryos. I didn't admit to that, though, and who knows where they went out when the lights went out. But we finally finished up like 2 a.m, and we had insects and bugs in every body cavity that we owned. It was that was our experience, and
kind of like us fighting the flies here. I got to apologize for that, but it hasn't frozen enough to get rid of the flies.
And they're finding their way in.
Well, and this place isn't totally sealed up either, so whenever the sun comes out, we've had a great fall. The sun gets in those windows and the flies are just nuts. So I apologize for that.
It's in our house. No,
I don't know if you noticed, but I had one in my bottom lip on one of the times I was drinking it. I just spit it out.
I thought you were chewing.
Yeah, they're on you a little bit here, but
I was just admiring your crate holes for the.
Oh yeah,
had to be.
They're right here.
Absolutely. Well, you can see where the water was.
Yep, talking about the farrowing crates and grinding those bolts off.
Absolutely. Yeah,
brought you right back to the farrowing barn.
I know it.
Back to your roots.
Goes around, comes around. Had no idea what that means, but
yeah, you've had a lot of experiences.
Oh, jeez.
And we can like I said before, anything that comes to mind, we can always jump back to that. But you and I were also speaking of your medical experiences.
Oh yeah,
and you mentioned wanting to talk about that. Urging people to get checked, and I'll just let you go from there.
I'm the epitome of good health, so you're just looking at him here. Yeah, not really. It's all genetics. Has to be.
Nice.
Okay, I got to get these years right. 1998. Yeah, because in 1998, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I will say this: it was the strangest thing. I contend that Dr. Rath, who was in Canton, probably saved my life, because your PSA should be 0 to 4. That's pretty normal. It can be higher than that, but 0 and 4. And mine was maybe 1.1, 1.2 when my wife convinced me that I should be checked. Maybe they did it one of the times when I got beat up by a cow and I was in the hospital anyway, but and they did, so they had a base for me. And then I came in with something else. I had a few, a bull kicked me in the mouth, and I split my sternum when a cow. So I've been to the emergency room.
The hazards of a cattleman.
Yeah, it is. And and so they had a baseline, and then it went up to 2.0, come back in 6 months, 3.0, maybe went up as high as 3.5, still not above normal.
Right.
And he says, I think.
But way above your baseline.
Yeah. And he says, I think, and I was 62, so 1945, 07, 08.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this was an 08. I'm sorry about I should remember that.
Still had an 8 on there.
Yeah. But I got so many. Dates that are flagged. Anyway, I was diagnosed, and in 09 I had the surgery, and I chose to go to Avera because they had a 6-arm robot, and Sanford only had a 5. No, not at all. That was just where I went for my surgery, and they said, yeah, we feel real confident that we got it all, but it was the prostate was totally involved with cancer. and I was in quote remission for 5.5 years. 5.5 years, my PSA antigen test moved, meaning I shouldn't have had any. I was at 0.20, and so it gets flagged, and you come back in 6 months. Well, it moves some more, and by the time you get everything set up with radiology or some other kind of treatment and so forth, it's a little bit longer than that. So I ended up having, in the early summer of whatever 5-6 years after that was, 35 treatments of radiation every day except for weekends, because cancer doesn't do anything on weekends. So that went well. We were clear. A PET scan showed that was clear, and I said, wonderful. So about another 5 years later, it was back again. That meant something had escaped. And so at that time, then I took an oral and carcinogenic drug and for treatment by mouth, and then a fairly handsome dose of steroids, and it was like an oral infusion of poison, which is essentially what you're doing when you're putting cancer drugs into your body, having to poison some good cells to get some bad ones.
Right.
And that seemed to work. And then suddenly, this was 2 or 3 years later, because now I'm now in my 16th year, so we'll just have to figure out the math, however. But it was obvious that it was back. So the doctors and the radiologist here in Sioux Falls, they said, no, we can't, in their term, burn you again. It's just too dangerous.
There's
too
limits.
Limits. And I said, could I have asked for a consult to Mayo? Because I knew they're doing a cryogenic or freezing in some instances it was working. So I got a referral to a pioneer in the cryogenic method of treatment, but he immediately turned my case over to the oncology radiologists, and then it was Dr. Stitch that said, "Yeah, you come on to Mayo and we'll see if we can do it." Well, he later confessed to me that if I'd come in on a wheelchair and was, 2 steps away from hospice or something worse, that he wouldn't attempt it, he said. And we fully expected to be turned down. Di and I had no hope that we'd be treated with radiology. But he says, I can do it. And he says, I'll be the one doing it, not some techs and so forth. He says, but I can do it. And he says,
because you're in relative good health, active.
Yes, yeah.
know.
I'd had a heart attack, and I had hives. No, and
shingles.
I had a mosquito bite. No, I was
COVID-19.
Vigor. He said vigor.
Vigor. I couldn't remember the word you used.
Vigor or vitality, whatever it was. And then he said, well, we'll give you some time to think about it. And we said, yeah. So Di and I we were just barely on the interstate, leaving Rochester from Mayo Clinic. And I says, I want to do it. I said, I'll do it. There's risks in all this. I'm going to go through it. And so we called while we were driving, called back, and they said, well, can you come in tomorrow? We said, no, we're going to have to line up some help and so forth because we don't know how long this is going to take. So that being said, it was maybe a week or 2 weeks later. It wasn't all that long. And we came to Mayo, and, when you're feeling sorry for yourself, all you got to do is sit in a waiting room in a hospital of that size at most, and you look around, you say, yeah, I'm not so bad off. And so, yeah, there were some uncomfortable moments with the enemas, imagine that, and et cetera, because they just don't want any extra bladder in the way or whatever, and you got fly visiting you, but it went really well, and we got it, quote unquote, Jerry. We got it. A few treatments, and We said, fantastic. And then it was 6 months later, and it was back.
Back again.
And so now I'm on
Dang.
a long-term shot every 6 months, which is still chemical manipulation of your body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I call it.
Right.
And I'm doing okay, but you know, going back to my way of thinking, because I'm in the process of trying to or having process of selling my cattle. I did that in 2008. I have a complete catalog of my sale that says I dispersed all my Gelbvieh cattle in 2008, and before I got out of the hospital, I had bought a herd of 50 cows from Troy and V.B. Thomas, the Thomas Ranch out there. True story. My wife said, "You did what?" I said, "Well, yeah, they said they got it all." You know, so.
Well, and you weren't going to sit around and just wonder if it's going to come back.
People ask me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just wallowing in self-pity."
Yeah.
And then I said, "And that is a totally worthless emotion." I mean, it really is. And we all have those moments. But I said, "Nah, I'm going on." But now I'm at 80. I'm thinking hanging up the sorting stick, and I don't have spurs to hang up. Because I won't get on a horse. not after Brazil. His nickname for my horse in Brazil was KOG, Keg of Dynamite.
Oh my gosh.
And the gauchos laughed when they said, he has KO, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was. Anyway.
Yeah. Most people I've taken horseback riding out here, they have some kind of story in the past of, my old, my great uncle put me on and slapped his butt and, that kind of thing.
I went through a cherry orchard or apple orchard in Lodi, California when I was maybe 9 years old, and the horse took me, and he knew exactly where that branch was.
And apple trees are not that tall.
No, they're not. And he took me right off with that. That was it.
Well, I knew you'd been diagnosed with cancer. I didn't know what. I didn't know when.
Sure.
Didn't know how bad. Every time I saw you, you looked good. There was a few times, a few years ago, where I could tell something was a little bit off.
He's a little gray.
But you're a fighter.
I stayed really busy, tried to. Yeah.
And so your advice to everybody medically is what? Test.
I don't care if you're 50 years old. If you have it in your family. My father tested, and he had PSA was 200. And he came in the pharmacy where I was working, and he told me that. And I said, "There's no way. That high number is not that high." And it was. So it's genetically there, the cancers. And yeah, take it and, just, I don't know. I'm not any different than anybody else. I've also had a couple heart attacks, and I've survived those, and keep on fighting with the cows and doing stupid things. So
well, in the air guard back here, we used to get a full physical every 5 years. Now
sure.
that's it's gotten less than that. And some things are outsourced. But I remember Doc Burris, and I can't remember if he was a VA doc or not. But at that time, when I turned 40, I was having a fifth year. And that's when you first got the digit test.
Oh, yes.
Back then. Now they've bumped it up to 50 for some reasons.
Yep.
But it was 40, and I've told the story many times. I just remember standing in there, and I knew it was coming. And Doc Burris, he's putting his gloves on. We talked about everything except this. And so then he gets to the end there, and he looks at me. He says, "All right, Jimbo, laying down or standing up?" And I said,
Sorry.
"Standing up, sir." And he smacked his glove and he says, "The military way." He goes,
It is. Yeah.
well, I tell you, you can't be afraid of that stuff because, your health is so important, and none of us are getting out of here alive.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
like that country song, everybody wants to go to heaven, but I don't want to go today.
Not today. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, I made an opening statement. It was probably Dr. Rath that encouraged me to proceed and self-advocate to get the first test. And I did this to him. I knew the doctors because of pharmacy and everything. And he does his digital exam of me. And then he's snapping off his gloves. He passes me a tissue, like you're supposed to clean the area. I went, handed to him. He said, Mettler, come on.
Clean the area. Could have been like, you made me cry, Doc.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So, hey, approach it with a smile and a laugh, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all you can do. Well, you've got a great outlook, and I appreciate that I got to know you more, and you're the reason I met Doyle Stanger, one of my best friends in the world.
I know he is.
There's like 10 on my hands that I count as my best friends, and
be happy with one.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm lucky enough to have quite a few.
Sure.
And you're the reason I met him, so that's pretty cool.
That
He and
is.
Michelle and
That
Cody,
is.
Christina,
Yeah.
they're all doing good. And we didn't touch on it, but when you went over to Mayo,
Mm-hmm.
their original home area is in Rochester.
Right there.
So you did try to see him while you were over
Yes,
there. He was
yes.
out trucking. But
Right. His mother worked there.
Oh,
His
did she?
mother worked at Mayo.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then I have a dear friend from high school, and her husband was my best man, and her son works at Mayo, so we were getting advice from him, like, where do you park? People say it's whatever, and so it's. I rang the bell at Mayo. I mean, that's when you get your last cancer treatment, and
Perfect.
yeah, it works good. And now Diana, my wife, of course, has just gone through chemo infusions. And
I had heard that she had started something
and recovering. Yeah,
for some reason.
Yeah, it's slow but sure.
Well,
She-
slow is steady and steady is fast.
I hear you. So yeah, so I'm finally maybe old enough to retire. So yeah.
I wondered, when you're talking about, I'm selling my cattle at 80, put the cattle prod down. I'm like, wow, that's
Yeah.
a man that loves what he does.
Yeah, I truly do, and I don't know. I don't understand why that bug bit me, but it certainly did. And I've had, like I said, even my children have had wonderful cross-cultural experiences because of the things I've done. Those people from Australia would come and visit, and Arno and his family. I got him in a snowmobile here in December and his wife Maria Elena. You can't even see her; she's so bundled up, from Brazil. Good grief, yeah. It's been good. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, they say sitting is the new smoking, and you are not a sitter.
Not if I can help it. I kind of got a sore butt right now.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Those stools, they're not the best stools, but
They work fine. I admire your undertaking here. That's for certain. So.
well, thanks, and I really appreciate you coming. And another reason that we do this, and I don't know if you've seen many of these or not, but I asked a similar question on a lot of them. And so you've got kids, you've got grandkids. Any great grandkids?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Nope.
Okay.
21 is my oldest grandson. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go to 4 greats. Great, 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 great grandkids. People you have not met.
I know.
And you have 25 of them sitting on the floor right in front of that center camera there. What would you like to say to them?
Oh, my. To the grandkids, I say this to my grandkids all the time. Use wisely your power of choice, because you're going to grow up very quickly and you're going to have to make a lot of choices. And all I ask of you is use them wisely. And I guess love, live, and laugh. You hear that? Yeah. Yeah. What's the other one I think I always think about? You live a life you live a life with what you get, but I'm not going to remember it now. But what's important is what you give.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can edit that out.
No. It's I go back to a country song. Yeah. It's not having what you want.
Yeah.
It's wanting what you have. That's maybe a version of what you're thinking there.
Well, yeah, and I've said this to my children even. When is it enough, or when will you find contentment?
Yes, that's the word right there.
When will you find contentment? Because it's not about the physical things you can own. more is not always everything. And I think my children have found that. And I'm really proud of them. I'm so proud of them. And I think I'll certainly say what the best thing that happened to you is what Al Sandvig said was not his wife, my wife. You know, yeah. I mean, she's the rock of this foundation. You know, so yeah,
Absolutely.
yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Appreciate it. Thank
Yep,
you.
that was a lot of fun.
You really? Okay. That seems kind of, well, I'm actually shaking because it was such a good experience. It
All
really
right.
was. You made that so comfortable for
You
me.
bet.
So.
Well, thanks for watching.
Oh, they're gone now? Wow.
Well, thanks for watching.
Oh, they're gone now? Wow.
Yeah, when you're not, when you're not filming live
Yeah.
or this or that, just
That's not fair.
defining a beginning and ending and an ending is a little difficult. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, so as
That was funny. The visit about Doyle, too. Good gosh, thank
he'll
you.
get a kick out of
Thank
that.
you for that, yeah.